Dear friends, welcome to Shiksha Mantra, your only YouTube channel of education and learning. So, in our discussion regarding English grammar, we are here today to discuss clause and specifically the basic of clauses from where our clause learning starts. So, let's begin. Yes, friends. If you look at the board, here I have written a sentence. What Molly wrote surprised her mom. So what would be your first task? Let me discuss this sentence first. If you find out the verbs here, so let's try to find out the verbs. The verbs are wrote and surprised. So here in this sentence we have found two verbs, and two verbs, that means obviously something special. This sentence doesn't contain a single verb, rather two verbs are there. So consider the first part first. What Maggie wrote. Who wrote? Maggie. So wrote, this verb is connected with Maggie, and this is the subject for this verb. And in the same way, if we consider the next verb surprised her mom. So if we ask this verb what, you'd get this as the answer for this verb. So this whole sentence, that is what Maggie wrote, is the subject for this verb surprised. So what we get? We finally get that in this sentence there are two verbs, and the two verbs have two different subjects. And that's the trick, dear friends. When you get a group of words like this in a sentence with a finite verb that contains a subject of its own and sometimes an object like her mom, etc., and sometimes you may not find the object. But what is the most interesting fact is that you'd get a subject for this verb, and obviously you'd get a complete sense for these parts, and we consider them as a clause. So what happens? You'd find a group of words within a sentence that contains a verb and it has a subject of its own, and we call it clauses. Now if you look at this sentence properly, what you'd get? What Maggie wrote, this is a part of this sentence, and surprised her mom, this is another part of this sentence. So these two parts together form this sentence, and we have found that there are two different clauses in this sentence. Now if these clauses are actually you study a bit keenly, you'd find something else from this. Now let's check the sentence. We may replace what Maggie wrote with it. So what would happen? We have replaced this with it, and you'd get that this is the subject for this verb. So it surprised her mom. Look, this is a complete sentence. It's not dependable on any other part of this sentence, and we call this principal clause. So this is the independent part of this sentence, and we call it principal clause. So when on any other part of this sentence, we call it principal clause. And now what Maggie wrote, it doesn't have a complete sense, though it contains some sense, but it depends on this principal clause. That's why this is not independent, rather it depends, and for this clause would be called what? It would be called subordinate clause, that we would call it. So finally we got two different types of clauses. from this sentence. One is the principal clause or independent clause, the clause that doesn't depend on any other part of the sentence, and the other is dependent clause, and we call it subordinate clause. So let's check how this principal clause and subordinate clause works. We have already found that the principal clause is not related to any other part of this sentence in terms of its sense. They are free. But what happens with subordinate clause? When it comes to subordinate clause, these subordinate clauses again can be used as a parts of speech in a sentence, and there are three different options. So let's check what are the options that are available here in subordinate clause. Yes, dear friends, subordinate clauses can be used as a noun in a sentence, and we consider it as noun clause. It can be used as an adjective in a sentence, and we consider it as adjective clause, and also can be used as an adverb, and we then consider it as adverbial clauses. So finally, we get three different types of clauses. That is a subordinate clause. That's a noun clause, an adjective clause, or an adverb clause. So these are the key factors for complex sentences. Yes, with a single clause, that is only the principal clause, we get simple sentence. When it comes to a principal clause and a subordinate clause, we get complex sentence. And when it comes principal clauses only, several principal clauses, that means two or more principal clauses in a sentence which are conjugated with some conjunctions, we consider them as compound sentence, and they are the coordinating clauses. So that's how we may start our discussion on clauses. I think that would be sufficient for this part, and we would go in detail with each and every clauses that's there, their uses, and how to find them out in a sentence, how to get the units of these subordinate clauses from a larger sentence and form the sentences sufficiently and very efficiently. That would be our concern. So let's check them in some other videos. Until then, I would obviously like to request you to like this video if you like this, and obviously go to the comment section and have comments, and you can check the I buttons there. I have started a discussion regarding the relation between phrases, clauses, and obviously parts of speech. So you may check it out. You would get a detailed knowledge of what's there in the relation between these three components of English grammar. And again, I would like to tell you, if you are new to my channel, obviously don't forget to subscribe this channel, and obviously press the bell icon for the first notifications, and would obviously meet with the other parts of clauses. Until then, happy learning.